I registered myself as an honorary consul with a few obscure international organizations that I found online. These organizations, it turned out, were mostly just websites that offered diplomatic credentials for a small fee. They weren't exactly legitimate, but they looked impressive, and that was all that mattered. I was, officially, a self-proclaimed diplomat, representing a fictional country, and ready to unleash my diplomatic immunity upon the unsuspecting residents of Willow Creek Estates. I'd always been a live-and-let-live kind of guy. After selling my tech startup to Meta, I was financially secure, and looking for was a quiet corner of the world where I could relax, unwind, and escape the hustle and bustle of city life. Willow Creek Estates, with its tree-lined streets, well-maintained houses, and promise of peaceful suburban living, seemed like the perfect place. I bought a charming little bungalow, nothing extravagant, just a comfortable home with a decent-sized yard where I could grill, read, and maybe even try my hand at gardening. All I wanted was a quiet life, a place to relax, to escape the rat race. I thought I'd found it in this sleepy little suburb. Boy, was I wrong, I thought, as I unpacked boxes filled with the detritus of my former, fast-paced life. I envisioned lazy afternoons spent lounging on the porch, evenings spent stargazing in the backyard, and weekends filled with the simple pleasures of homeownership. I soon learned that peace and quiet in this neighborhood meant conformity and control, enforced by the iron fist of the Homeowners Association. I had no idea that my dream of a tranquil suburban existence was about to collide head-on with the reality of HOA tyranny. My first clue that Willow Creek Estates wasn't quite the idyllic paradise I'd imagined came in the form of a crisp, white envelope slipped under my front door. It was a friendly reminder from the HOA, informing me that my trash cans had been left at the curb for an excessive period of time, approximately 10 minutes past the designated collection time. The letter was signed by Eleanor Whitmore, President, Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association. Eleanor Whitmore, a retired bureaucrat who treated the HOA like her own personal kingdom, and suburban regulations like the sacred laws of a minor deity. She was the kind of woman who probably alphabetized her spice rack and used a color-coded system to organize her sock drawer. And, unfortunately for me, she was about to become my personal nemesis. I pictured her as a tightly wound, perpetually frowning woman with a clipboard permanently attached to her hand, patrolling the streets in search of HOA violations. My first encounter with Eleanor confirmed my suspicions. She appeared on my doorstep a few days later, a clipboard clutched in her hand, her expression a mixture of disapproval and righteous indignation. "Mr. Carter," she began, her voice as sharp and cold as a winter wind, "I'm afraid we have a problem." She paused, letting the word hang in the air like a threat. "Your trash cans, Mr. Carter. They were left at the curb for an unacceptable amount of time. This is a clear violation of HOA Bylaw 3. 2.b, subsection 4. I stared at her, dumbfounded. "They were out there for 10 extra minutes," I said. "I was running late." "The rules are the rules, Mr. Carter," she retorted. Her lips pursed in a tight, disapproving line. "We must maintain order. We must uphold standards. We must prevent chaos." She said chaos, as if leaving my trash cans out for a few extra minutes was akin to unleashing a horde of barbarians upon the unsuspecting residents of Willow Creek Estates. The trash can incident was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, I received a steady stream of HOA violation notices, each one more ridiculous than the last. There was the complaint about my car, a slightly older model sports car, which was deemed too old and unattractive to be parked in my own driveway for more than 24 hours. Apparently, only late-model vehicles in good condition were permitted. Then came the warning about my curtains. They were, according to Eleanor, not uniform with the rest of the block. Apparently, all window treatments in Willow Creek Estates were required to be neutral in color and consistent in style. My slightly bohemian, patterned curtains were a clear and present danger to the neighborhood's aesthetic harmony. And then there was the backyard furniture. My comfortable, slightly worn Adirondack chairs were deemed too casual for the community aesthetic. Eleanor suggested, in a handwritten note attached to the violation notice, that I replace them with something more refined. Perhaps a set of wrought iron furniture in, you guessed it, beige. My internal reaction was a mixture of annoyance, frustration, and a growing sense of disbelief. Were these people serious? Did they really have nothing better to do than micromanage their neighbors' lives and enforce a set of arbitrary, nonsensical rules? I thought. I tried to ignore the notices, to laugh them off, to chalk it up to suburban eccentricity. But the HOA, under Eleanor's relentless leadership, was not to be ignored. The fines started piling up, the threats became more explicit, and the pressure to conform began to feel overwhelming. The breaking point came with the 5th fine in a single month. It was for some utterly trivial infraction, something so minor that I can't even remember what it was. But it was the final straw. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the violation notice, a feeling of cold fury rising within me. Enough was enough. I wasn't going to let Eleanor Whitmore and her band of beige-loving bureaucrats dictate every aspect of my life. I needed a new strategy, something bold, something audacious, something diplomatic. Enough was enough. I wasn't going to let Eleanor Whitmore and her band of beige-loving bureaucrats dictate every aspect of my life. I needed a new strategy, something bold, something audacious, something diplomatic, I thought, pacing around my kitchen, my mind racing. I needed a way to fight back, to escape the HOA's jurisdiction, to reclaim my freedom, and then it hit me. A spark of an idea, so crazy, so ridiculous, so utterly perfect that it brought a smile to my face. An embassy, a fake embassy. I'd turn my house into a sovereign territory, a diplomatic mission, a place where the HOA's rules simply did not apply. It was a loophole, a legal gray area, a way to exploit the system's own absurdity. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I knew it would be a challenge. But I also knew that it was the perfect way to fight back against Eleanor Whitmore and her reign of terror. Eleanor Whitmore, you want a war on, well, everything? You've got one. Prepare to face the diplomatic immunity of Mulvania, I declared internally, a surge of defiant energy coursing through me. The plan was hatched. The research would begin. And the Republic of Mulvania, a fictional nation born of suburban frustration, was about to be born. My plan to transform my house into a fake embassy required, first and foremost, a crash course in international law. I needed to understand the concept of diplomatic immunity, the legal status of foreign embassies, and, most importantly, whether any of this applied to a suburban homeowner with a vendetta against his HOA. I dove headfirst into the murky world of treaties, conventions, and diplomatic protocols. I spent hours online reading articles about the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, the rights and privileges of ambassadors, and the legal gray areas surrounding sovereign territory. My browser history went from HOA dispute resolution to diplomatic immunity laws and how to start your own country in record time, I chuckled as I navigated the surprisingly complex landscape of international law. I discovered that, yes, foreign embassies were generally exempt from local laws and regulations, including, crucially, HOA rules. They were considered sovereign territory, subject only to the laws of their own country, or, in my case, the laws of a country I was about to invent. Of course, there were caveats. There were limitations. You couldn't just declare your house an embassy and expect to get away with murder, literally. But the principle was there. Diplomatic immunity was a real thing, and it offered a potential escape from the clutches of Eleanor Whitmore and her Beige Brigade. The more I researched, the more convinced I became that my plan, however outlandish, might actually work. It was a long shot, a legal Hail Mary, but it was also the most gloriously absurd and potentially effective way to fight back against the HOA's tyranny. Before I could declare my house an embassy, I needed a country. A fictional country, of course, but one that sounded plausible, believable, and just ridiculous enough to annoy Eleanor Whitmore. I spent an evening brainstorming, sketching out flags, and inventing a national history. I wanted something that sounded vaguely Eastern European, a place that could plausibly exist in some forgotten corner of the world, a country known for, well, something. And that's when it hit me. Goats. My fictional country would be a nation of goat herders, a proud, independent, and slightly smelly republic with a long and entirely fabricated history of pastoral excellence. And the name? It had to be something catchy, something memorable, something that would roll off the tongue and stick in Eleanor Whitmore's craw. After several attempts, I settled on it. The Republic of Mulvania. Mulvania. It sounded vaguely Eastern European, slightly ridiculous, and utterly believable. It was perfect, I thought, admiring my handiwork. I designed a flag, a majestic goat rampant on a field of green, with a crossed shepherd's crook and badminton racket, because why not? I invented a national anthem, a surprisingly catchy tune played on a kazoo. I even drafted a brief history of Mulvania, filled with tales of heroic goat herders, fierce badminton rivalries, and a long-standing tradition of ignoring petty rules and regulations. It was a masterpiece of fabricated history, a fictional nation born of suburban frustration and a healthy dose of creative absurdity. With Mulvania officially established, it was time to acquire the necessary trappings of a diplomatic mission. I needed to transform my humble suburban home into a believable, or at least semi-believable, embassy. First, I ordered a large brass plaque engraved with the words, Embassy of the Republic of Mulvania, Diplomatic Mission. It was surprisingly heavy and surprisingly official-looking. Next, I needed a flag. I found a company online that specialized in custom-made flags, and I sent them my hastily drawn design for the Mulvanian national flag. The result was impressive. A majestic goat, proudly displayed on a field of green, with the crossed shepherd's crook and badminton racket adding a touch of intentional absurdity. I also ordered a set of official stationery, complete with the Mulvanian crest and a ridiculously formal-sounding letterhead. I crafted a fake website for the Republic of Mulvania, filling it with humorous details about the country's history, culture, and non-existent tourist attractions. I included photos of goats, borrowed from the internet, descriptions of traditional Mulvanian cuisine, mostly goat cheese-based dishes, and even a fabricated list of famous Mulvanians, all of whom conveniently shared my last name. And finally, I registered myself as an honorary consul with a few obscure international organizations that I found online. These organizations, it turned out, were mostly just websites that offered diplomatic credentials for a small fee. They weren't exactly legitimate, but they looked impressive, and that was all that mattered. I was, officially, a self-proclaimed diplomat, representing a fictional country, and ready to unleash my diplomatic immunity upon the unsuspecting residents of Willow Creek Estates. To complete the embassy transformation, I needed one final touch: security. No self-respecting diplomatic mission is complete without a stern-faced guard standing at the entrance, protecting the sanctity of the sovereign territory. I, of course, didn't have the budget or the need for a real security guard. So I improvised. I called my friend, Dave, and explained my plan. "You want me to stand in front of your house," he said, his voice a mixture of amusement and disbelief. "Dressed in a suit and pretend to be a security guard? For a fake embassy?" "Exactly," I replied. "It's for the HOA. You know, for diplomatic reasons." There was a long pause. Then Dave burst out laughing. "Carter," he said, "you're insane. I love it. I'm in." So Dave agreed to be my security detail, at least for the weekends. He borrowed a dark suit, purchased a pair of mirrored sunglasses, and even, to my delight, printed out a fake diplomatic security badge. He'd stand at the entrance to my driveway, his arms crossed, his expression stoic, and pretend to check the passports, library cards mostly, of anyone who approached. He took the role seriously, developing a whole backstory for himself. He was, he'd explained to curious neighbors, a former Mulvanian Special Forces operative now assigned to protect the honorary consul, me, from, well, whatever threats a suburban homeowner might face. It was all utterly ridiculous, of course, but it added another layer of authenticity to my fake embassy, another layer of confusion and frustration for Eleanor Whitmore and the HOA. And frankly, it was incredibly entertaining. The transformation of my humble suburban home into the honorary consulate of the Republic of Mulvania was a gradual yet dramatic process. It was like watching a stage set being assembled, piece by piece, each element adding to the overall illusion of diplomatic grandeur. First came the plaque. The large brass plaque, engraved with the words, "Embassy of the Republic of Mulvania, Diplomatic Mission," was mounted prominently next to my front door, replacing the perfectly ordinary house number that had previously adorned the wall. Then came the flag. The Mulvanian flag, with its majestic goat and crossed shepherd's crook and badminton racket, was hoisted onto a newly installed flagpole, positioned strategically in my front yard. It flapped proudly in the breeze, a symbol of fictional national pride and a giant, colorful middle finger to the beige conformity of Sunridge Estates. The website, of course, was already up and running, filled with humorous details about Mulvania's history, culture, and non-existent tourist attractions. I'd even added a Contact Us page with a fake email address for the Mulvanian Ministry of Housing Affairs. And finally, there was Dave, my security guard, standing at the entrance to my driveway, resplendent in his borrowed suit and mirrored sunglasses, his expression a perfect blend of seriousness and barely concealed amusement. He'd even started practicing a vaguely Eastern European accent, just to add to the authenticity. The overall effect was impressive. It was ridiculous, of course, but it was also surprisingly convincing. My house, once just another beige box in a row of beige boxes, now looked like a legitimate diplomatic outpost, a tiny island of fictional sovereignty in the heart of suburbia. It was a masterpiece of petty revenge, a testament to the power of creative loophole exploitation, and a giant, brightly colored screw you to Eleanor Whitmore and the HOA. With the embassy transformation complete, it was time to deliver the coup de grace, the formal notification to the HOA that my property was now under the jurisdiction of a foreign power. I drafted an official letter, using the Mulvanian stationery I'd created, complete with the fake crest and the ridiculously formal-sounding letterhead. The letter, written in a deliberately convoluted and bureaucratic style, informed the HOA that my residence had been designated as the honorary consulate of the Republic of Mulvania, and that, as such, It was now considered sovereign territory, subject only to the laws of Mulvania, which, conveniently, I was in the process of writing. The letter read, in part, "Due to unforeseen circumstances and in accordance with the principles of self-determination, please be informed that the property at your address is now under the protection of the Republic of Mulvania, a proud nation. As such, we are not subject to arbitrary rules regarding lawn ornamentation, mailbox colors, or the presence of distinguished ungulates." It concluded with a polite request that all future correspondence be directed to the Mulvanian Ministry of Housing Affairs, email definitelyreal@mulvania.gov. I hand-delivered the letter to the HOA office, placing it directly on Eleanor Whitmore's desk, a smug smile on my face. I imagined her reaction when she read it, the sputtering, the outrage, the sheer, unadulterated disbelief. It was a beautiful thought. The news of my diplomatic immunity spread through Sunridge Estates like wildfire, and, as expected, Eleanor Whitmore's reaction was spectacular. She stormed over to my house, her face a mask of apoplectic rage, her beige pantsuit practically vibrating with indignation. She was accompanied by a small contingent of her most loyal HOA followers, all looking equally bewildered and outraged. This is outrageous!" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at the Mulvanian flag flapping proudly in the breeze. "You can't just declare your house an embassy. This is insane!" I emerged from behind the security gate, formerly my driveway, a picture of calm, diplomatic composure. "Good afternoon, Eleanor," I said, my voice dripping with feigned politeness. "Welcome to the Honorary Consulate of the Republic of Mulvania. May I help you?" "Help me?" she sputtered, her voice reaching a pitch that could shatter glass. You've seceded. You've betrayed the HOA." "Actually, Eleanor," I corrected her gently, "according to international law, I've simply asserted my right to self-determination. And as a foreign diplomat, I'm no longer subject to your local regulations." I gestured towards the brass plaque next to my front door. "Mulvania has very different rules about, well, everything, really." "Mulvania isn't a real country," she roared, her face now a shade of purple that I'd previously only seen on particularly ripe eggplants. "I assure you, Eleanor," I said with a shrug, "it's as real as your authority over my property. Which is to say, not very—" I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that I knew would infuriate her. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have diplomatic matters to attend to. Perhaps you'd like to schedule an appointment with the Mulvanian Ministry of Housing Affairs. Their email address is on the website." Watching Eleanor's face contort with rage and disbelief was more satisfying than any perfectly compliant mailbox could ever be, I thought, as she sputtered, fumed, and threatened legal action. It was a performance for the ages, a meltdown of epic proportions. And I was enjoying every second of it. Eleanor, true to form, did not take her defeat lying down. She launched a full-scale assault on my embassy, attempting to use every weapon in her bureaucratic arsenal to force me to comply with HOA rules. First, she called the city. She complained about zoning violations, building code infractions, and even, I later learned, unlicensed diplomatic activity. The city officials, however, were not amused. They informed her, politely but firmly, that there was nothing they could do. My house, while certainly unusual, was not in violation of any city ordinances. And as for the embassy claim, well, that was a matter for the State Department, not the city of town name. Then she called the police. She claimed that I was disturbing the peace, harassing my neighbors, and even, in a moment of inspired lunacy, plotting a coup. The police, 2 bored-looking officers, arrived, took one look at my embassy, listened to my explanation, and then, after exchanging amused glances, told Eleanor to stop wasting their time. Finally, she turned to the HOA's lawyer, the long-suffering Mr. Henderson. She demanded that he file a lawsuit, that he find some legal loophole, some obscure regulation, that would allow the HOA to crush my rebellion. Mr. Henderson, however, was forced to deliver the bad news. He'd reviewed the HOA bylaws, he'd researched diplomatic law, and he'd concluded that, yes, technically, I could declare my house an embassy. It was a legal gray area, a loophole so bizarre, so unexpected, that nobody had ever bothered to address it. The HOA meetings became increasingly farcical. Eleanor would rant and rave, demanding action, while the other members, increasingly intimidated by me and secretly amused by the situation, would shuffle their feet and look at the ceiling. They'd try to come up with new rules, new regulations, but each attempt was met with a swift and decisive rebuttal from me, armed with my, admittedly limited knowledge of international law and a smug, knowing smile. It was like watching a chess match where one side only had pawns and the other side had a diplomatic corps backed by a fictional nation of goat herders. The HOA was powerless. Eleanor Whitmore was defeated. And the Republic of Mulvania, in all its absurd glory, was triumphant. The story of the Embassy of Mulvania, as it inevitably became known, spread like wildfire across the internet. Someone, presumably one of the many amused neighbors, posted a picture of my house, complete with the flag, the plaque, and Dave in his security guard uniform on social media. And then it exploded. The post went viral, racking up thousands of likes, shares, and comments. People were fascinated by the story, by the sheer audacity of declaring your house a foreign embassy to escape HOA rules. They were amused by the absurdity of Mulvania, by the fake history, the goat-herding industry, and the aggressive badminton teams. Local news outlets picked up the story, then national news outlets, then international. My house, my fake embassy, became a symbol of rebellion, a testament to the power of creative loophole exploitation, and a giant middle finger to all the petty tyrants of the world. The online comments were a goldmine of amusement. "This is the most epic HOA takedown I've ever seen," one user wrote. "Give this man a medal," declared another. "I want to move to Mulvania," a third commented. There were memes, there were jokes, there were even a few surprisingly well-made fan art depictions of Sir Reginald, the magnificent peacock that had started it all. The viral fame of the Embassy of Mulvania had a tangible impact on the neighborhood. People started driving by just to see it, to take pictures, to pose in front of the flag and the plaque. TikTokers arrived, eager to create content featuring the most rebellious house in America. They'd film themselves crossing the border into Mulvania, pretending to get their passports stamped by Dave, and generally acting like they were visiting a foreign country. Tourists, actual tourists, started showing up, asking for directions to the Mulvanian embassy and inquiring about visa requirements. I even had a few people approach me, asking if I could help them obtain Mulvanian citizenship. I politely explained that it wasn't a real country. Local businesses, sensing an opportunity, got in on the action. The local bakery created official Mulvanian pastries, a surprisingly delicious concoction of goat cheese, honey, and, for some reason, paprika. A nearby gift shop started selling Mulvanian flags, t-shirts, and even honorary consul certificates. The neighborhood, once known for its beige conformity and its tyrannical HOA, was now a tourist destination, a quirky landmark, a testament to the power of absurdity. And it was all thanks to a fake embassy and a very real desire for revenge. Eleanor Whitmore, predictably, did not handle her defeat gracefully. She became a recluse, rarely seen outside her house, her beige curtains perpetually drawn. The HOA meetings, once her personal fiefdom, were now filled with laughter, camaraderie, and a general sense of relief. And then one day, a "for sale" sign appeared in front of her house. She'd had enough. She couldn't stand the sight of my embassy, the sound of the laughter, the constant reminder of her humiliating defeat. She sold her house, at a significant loss, I heard, and moved away, presumably to inflict her bureaucratic tyranny on some other unsuspecting community. Her reign of terror was over, and the Republic of Mulvania, in all its fictional glory, had triumphed. Scene 4. The annual celebration. 200 words. To mark the glorious occasion, I, as the self-declared and only ambassador, created a new holiday. Mulvanian Independence Day. Of course, it's not a real country, so the date picked was the anniversary of the day I declared my house an embassy. It's a giant party. The street is closed off, food trucks come, local businesses set up stalls, kids run around waving homemade Mulvanian flags. It is the social event of the year. And so I remained the honorary consul of the Republic of Mulvania, the accidental ambassador of suburban rebellion. My house, once just another beige box in a row of beige boxes, was now a landmark, a symbol of victory, a testament to the power of creative loophole exploitation. It was a warm summer evening. I was sitting on my porch wearing my completely unnecessary but wonderfully ridiculous ambassadorial sash, sipping a glass of imported Mulvanian wine, which was, in reality, just grape juice mixed with a bit of sparkling water. A new neighbor, a young couple who'd just moved in down the street, walked by. "Excuse me," the man said. "We're new to the neighborhood. We were just wondering, what's the deal with the embassy?" I smiled. "It's a long story," I said, "but the short version is, I had a disagreement with the HOA about, well, everything, really." I adjusted my sash, feeling a surge of pride. "Welcome to Mulvania, my friend." Who knew that a few HOA violations and a burning desire for revenge could lead to all this? I guess sometimes you just gotta turn your house into a fake embassy to find your peace, I thought, as I watched the sun set, casting a golden glow on my decidedly not beige house. I raised my glass in a silent toast. To the honorary consulate of the Republic of Mulvania, may it forever stand as a beacon of hope for all those oppressed by HOA tyranny, and a warning to all future suburban dictators